I like that. All right.
Whatever you want to do.
So
What do I
you
do?
started in marketing. Were you
Mm.
working for yourself or were you working for a corporation?
No, I worked for a corporation. I actually worked for news for a long time.
Okay. And how did you get into that? And why did you specifically get into the news? How did it all start?
About 20 years ago, media was a big thing. It was a good work hard,
Yeah.
party hard
Yeah.
environment,
Yeah.
which is kind of tend to what you look for when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Less so when you're in your 40s.
So you weren't the investment driven type of person at that age. It was more like
No. Okay, that's a different story. Okay, there's a work, career, interest
yeah.
kind of component. But just because you have that doesn't mean that you're not into investment, right?
Yeah.
Investment or finances doesn't mean that you're not into that,
Mm.
right? So with investment and finance, I would say probably at 10 is when I got interested in it.
Okay.
And that's because migrant family.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Actually, you were born here, right?
Yep. Obviously.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was your dad?
No.
No.
No, he wasn't. No.
Okay. Okay. So migrant family, you typically start off with very little. You work very hard. You work 3 different jobs.
Yeah.
You try to make ends meet. You save and you try to put your money into places where it's gonna
Yeah.
grow.
Hard
right?
assets. Yeah.
And so at an early, my parents didn't speak English, right? So at an early age, I was reading contracts, reading things, trying to work out what's what.
Mm-hmm.
And I very quickly realized if you don't do something at a young age, if you wait till you're 40, 50, it's too late.
Mm.
So one of the biggest advantages you have is youth.
Did that mindset come like after you had witnessed something or a friend maybe at work's like, hey, do you want to look at this property? Do you want to 1, 2, and 3? Or maybe it was your partner. Like what got you into flipping from you've always been a creative, but instead of thinking I want to do marketing and use them my whole life, and then now I want to start having, hard assets, producing income after I retire. When did that like sort of
At a very young age, because
Okay.
I didn't want to be 50, 40, working 3 jobs, thinking, how are we going to make it? How are we going to put dinner on the table?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Or thinking we're going to have to shop at Kmart for our clothes.
Okay.
Right? That was a big thing in high school. Nobody wants to be wearing Kmart clothes, right? But sometimes you don't have a choice
Of course.
if that's where you're coming from, right?
Yeah.
I guess what happened is my parents were into flipping properties.
Uh-huh.
So
Buy, hold, sell, then
correct.
renovate and
Correct. The typical thing, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't require a degree, doesn't require a lot of English.
Mm-hmm.
It requires hard work.
Of course.
It
Hard
does
labor.
hard labor. It requires buying probably the right property and selling at the right time. So yes, there is a little bit of skill involved in it. But I basically saw how that went.
Yeah.
Did the numbers on it. And I thought, okay, all right, this is an interesting way of making money that does involve
did you get on the
working
tools?
9 to 5. I painted.
All right.
I
Yeah.
painted. What else did I do? Made things look
Landscaping?
pretty. No landscaping.
No.
I didn't get on the shovel. No.
All right. All right. No landscaping.
Maybe some interior design if you like. Some cushions.
Yeah.
Some
Just go to IKEA,
cushions.
just throw in a few things.
Yeah, make it look pretty for the sale, things like that.
All right. And
Yeah.
then you saw the numbers and then you started thinking like, okay, what about if I can actually buy and own a property instead of doing that?
So I bought my first property at 22.
Okay.
I was on 29K a year.
How?
That was back then. That was the going rate.
What's 29K equivalent to now?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look at the inflation numbers and everything else, but
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, okay, that's fair. And it was a unit, a townhouse?
Yeah, no, it was a unit.
Okay. That same unit, do you still own or you've sold it?
No. Yes, it's changed many times.
Oh, okay.
Many times since then.
So you got the growth, you pretty much like got the growth and bought into another refinance. Is that what you were doing?
Bought into a different property, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So moved chest spaces around. Generally, property is a long-term investment, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it has to be 20 years. hold for 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
Then you move on to something else, or maybe you add to it,
Mm.
depending on what life throws at you, where you're at with your lifestyle, and what you need it
Yeah.
to do, right? So you buy young,
Yeah.
you hold, you sell, maybe you upgrade, or maybe you add to it, depending on what's happening
You know,
in
we come
life.
from migrant families. They? I've never heard a migrant ever say you should buy, hold, and sell. It's more always just buy and hold.
Maybe, and that's probably what my parents would say,
Yeah.
buy and hold. But life sometimes throws different things at you, and you have different priorities, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So later in life, so maybe you buy when you're 20, but then let's say you've got 4 kids, which I don't, by the way. But
Yeah.
let's say now you have 4 kids,
Yeah.
you've got other responsibilities, you've got aging parents,
Mm.
you need a bigger house,
Yeah.
you need a granny flat at the back for the in-laws to live in because you don't want them in the same house with you.
Yeah.
You don't want to end
I
up
know
divorced.
the stories. I know the horror stories. I know
You
the
don't
horror
end up
stories.
divorced, but you want that granny flat at the back because you can't put him in a nursing home, right?
Correct.
You don't do that.
No, that's wrong.
That's wrong, right? You don't do that.
unethical. There's a whole wide range
Yeah.
of factors.
So if you're not going to do all that, you need to move a few chess pieces around to make it work,
Yeah, of course.
which
Okay.
might mean that you can't hold and you
Have to sell.
reinvest, yes, into something else.
All right. Then you end up getting, what was it? You get your Cert 4 in, was it finance, mortgage broking?
Yes.
And how long have you been a broker for right now?
A few years, yeah.
Okay. Just before the podcast started, we were talking about the 3% buffer.
Yes. The misconception.
What's the misconception about the 3% buffer, and how does that affect a first-time investor, or maybe a normal investor?
All right. So when you get a loan, you need to service the loan, right? You need to demonstrate that you service the loan.
Yep.
So when you service a loan, typically a bank will use a 3% buffer on the rate, right?
Okay.
And that is generally true,
Okay.
with a couple of exceptions. Exception one is that if you're refinancing, it's a 1% discount on the buffer, and that's with normal banks, right?
Can you just break down what that actually meant? Because some people are not going to know.
Okay, so with a refinance, you currently have a loan and you're refinancing with another lender. They
Yep.
will use a lower servicing buffer than
Okay.
they would if you were just purchasing a property.
Yep.
Right?
All right.
That's one. Two is hypothetically, right? Let's say you don't service with a major bank,
Mm-hmm.
right, at the 3%. A lot of the banks that are maybe second tier banks, so I'm thinking like MA Money, Finsure, Pepper Money, Liberty,
Yep.
will use 2%.
Okay.
And now you're thinking, well, what's that 1%? How much a difference is that 1% going to make, right?
Yep.
About 5 to 15% in borrowing capacity. That's
Wow.
the difference that it will make,
Wow.
right? So here's a scenario. I had a client that came to me,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't service with a normal bank, but was like, I need to buy this property.
Yep.
I have to have it. Numbers weren't working, right? But moved into a second tier lender at the 2%.
Yep.
It worked. He could get what he wanted. And then, of course, everyone's thinking, second tier lender, I've heard horror stories, the rate's going to be higher. Well, what if I get stuck with it, whatnot? And potentially, yes, it's true, your rate will be slightly higher.
Yep.
But if you're going to take this strategy and do this, you do it for a period of time, right? So maybe you do it for 1 year, 2 year. And when you can service that loan, you move.
Okay.
You don't stay with Liberty, for example, for 20 years. You stay to get in the market because you're not servicing. And once you service, you move to another lender. It's a short-term strategy is what I would say. But it doesn't mean that if the numbers are not working with a major bank, it doesn't mean that you're out. And then you're going, well, why should I do that? Why would anyone want to do that? Because if you want to get in and if it's a good investment, then maybe it's worth doing.
And how do you deem something to be a good investment? Obviously, everyone's at different journeys. Someone at 19 is not going to be buying the same property as someone that's 45, especially if they've got different incomes. If, for argument's sake, someone is between 80 to 100K, should they be looking at second-tier lenders or should they be going to a major bank like CBA or Westpac or NAB?
I think if servicing is the problem and you're slightly off, then yeah, go with a second tier lender.
Do
If
you
if
suggest
that's
for
what
them to go for a second tier lender even if they can use their parents as guarantors? Or
No, okay, that's different. No,
Okay.
if you've got options, not
Yeah.
everyone's got that option though.
Yeah.
If you've got that option to have a guarantor
Yeah.
or use other means, then do it. I'm saying if you don't, and
Yeah.
that is the only thing that's stopping you from
Yeah.
getting into it, I'm saying there are options.
Okay.
And sometimes it's better to do that than to wait an extra 3 years to have that money and to be able to service it.
Okay. In terms of servicing, after the budget, they were saying things that your borrowing capacity can now be. It's not going to be the same as it used to be before the budget. What do they mean by that? Because
that's
correct me if
if
I'm
you're
wrong.
using negative gearing.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's like if you're making 100 grand, you can borrow 5.5 times or up to 6 times more than
Depending on the lender, but it's about right.
So has that also been affected now as well? Or
So that comment about borrowing post budget would be around the negative gearing element, right? So
Okay.
negative gearing is now not assessed
Yep.
with residential, but bear in mind with commercial, you can still negative gear.
But you need 20-30% deposit?
Correct. But with residential, correct, that is right. So the negative gearing is taken out of it, which shifts the numbers in the calculator, right? Which amends it.
Yep.
But that's specifically for an investment property.
Yep.
Right. So it doesn't apply to owner occupier.
Okay. If you were to purchase an owner occupier and then, argument's sake, after 3 years, be like, I want to switch this to an investment,
Yeah, go for it.
can you then go to do negative gearing or
You have to have bought before
like a
budget
loophole?
night.
Try and look for a loophole over there.
You can if you've got it. So, okay, this is a tricky one, right? Because I don't think the legislation in detail has come out to say this is exactly the terms around it and these are the.
Yeah, it's like with
This is how it's
supply.
gonna work.
Like people were saying, if you had a duplex,
Yes.
on the same title, it's like, does that mean
That's
that
a
we're
new
adding
development.
new supply?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
new development, you can negative give.
Both.
Yeah, exactly.
Or-
So,
okay.
well, that's the thing, right? The legislation hasn't come out. So, will it apply to that? Will it not apply to that?
So
The
how
way
would
it
you
looks
know?
at the moment is that yes, it would. But
Okay.
that would be a question for accountants,
accountant,
tax
yeah.
people
Yeah.
when the actual rules and the details of the tax actually comes out.
And when does that come out?
I don't think it's been released. It's definitely not been released
So
yet.
it'd be next year 27.
Probably.
Okay, that probably end of that financial year.
Yeah. But
Okay.
basically, if you buy a new property,
Mm.
negative gearing still applies. You buy a commercial property, negative gearing still applies. If you owned a house before budget announcement and then you decide to turn it into an investment, you can negative gear it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you think maybe the government should have done, because the Liberals now are proposing something in Melbourne where if you purchase a property under $1 million, you can avoid stamp duty. That's what they're trying to, sell to get votes, obviously. But do you think a policy like that would actually work? Like, do you think it would work in favor or just keep driving the prices up even higher?
My personal opinion is that it would just drive the prices. I don't think it would do anything. I think that's just a political statement to get votes. It's one of those things where, all right, you're going to a concert, and everyone's going to this magical concert. I'm trying to think who's popular.
Drake.
Okay.
Drake is the GOAT.
Right. Okay. Let's go with that. And it's sold out.
Yep.
Right. At capacity. They've released more tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's excited. Everyone's like, "There's more tickets to buy, right?"
Yeah.
Great. We're going to spend on. We're going to do this. We want to buy this ticket, but they haven't released more seats. There's no seats,
Tickets are going to go way higher now, especially for people that want to try get in.
and there's no seats.
Yeah.
So you buy. Yeah. Okay. Great. Sounds very exciting, but there's nowhere to actually sit or go. It's the same with housing.
Uh-huh. So what's the solution that you see, honestly? Because everyone keeps saying, maybe I should just pack up and move to Singapore. I'll move to Dubai. I'll move to Thailand. I'll move to Bali.
15% tax. Why not?
Like, there's options, but obviously not everyone has the option to, especially if you've got kids, you've got family here, you've got multiple factors over here.
I think Australia is still an attractive market. Yes, the game or the rules of the game have changed.
Yeah.
Right. Um, but I think it's about maybe where do you put it, where do you go, and I feel like what I'm seeing at the moment is maybe there's a bit more focus on yield,
Yeah.
so returns on property, as opposed to capital, right? Because capital's been shifted a little bit. And here's another interesting thing that I am kind of seeing with people that are high net worth, right? So lots of money.
Yeah.
Trusts obviously are now impacted as well. There's been lots of conversations about trusts, but trusts are actually still quite attractive for people, and probably not for the reasons that you can think of.
They get taxed at 30%, is it?
Yeah, well, I think that's the proposal, but
Okay.
why do you think they'd still be attractive?
Why do I think that's a bit
Yeah.
attractive? At a company rate, you get taxed at what, 25%?
Yeah.
And a tax 30.
Yeah, I'll
I
give you a
can't.
clue.
I
It's not
can't.
for financial reasons.
Honestly, I can't think of why. I'm
It's
just
for
thinking
asset
numbers.
protection.
Ah, okay.
So people don't mind, which I thought was going to be a big thing
Mm.
with those clients. But I would say, okay, maybe I'm using the wrong words there. Obviously, they mind,
Mm. Mm.
but you have asset protection with a trust.
Does that mean like if someone tries to sue you,
Or you
for
get
argument's sake,
divorced and you want your children to inherit something that
none of it
you
is held in your name?
correct.
But what about if something was held in a company structure? Would that person then be liable, or like can?
See, Josh, I haven't got my law degree yet, but come back to me
Yeah.
when I get
Yeah.
my law degree. I don't know, but I think that for people that have a substantial amount of money,
Mm.
a trust structure is still quite valuable because it provides asset protection, which you can't get elsewhere.
Mm.
And I suppose if you're passing things on
Yeah.
to a beneficiary
Yeah.
from an inheritance perspective, it's
Mm.
still quite a good tool to use. So
So you can purchase properties in a trust.
you can, yeah.
So what's the borrowing capacity on that? And have you come across that?
That's depends is the answer.
Okay. Okay. But the
There's a
majority of your clients are, as of right now, residential, or they're a mix of commercial as well?
most are residential. There is some self-managed super fund
Ooh,
style of
Ooh.
investments,
Ooh.
and that is
been impacted.
it has been impacted, but only residential, not commercial, right?
Yeah.
So commercial or multiple,
Yeah.
multiple style dwellings
Yeah.
are not impacted. So you
Mm.
can still get them in a self-managed super fund. And typically commercial has good yield, right? Typically, well, you'd hope so anyway.
Yeah.
And that is probably what you want out of your super.
Do your clients like tip over into commercial? Are they more chasing, just regular cash flow, or the actual growth of the property?
Typical yield, the return.
Yeah, okay.
They're looking for the return usually.
Okay. And for the majority of your clients now, are they purchasing around New South Wales, or they're going over into other areas? Because correct me if I'm wrong, New South Wales has the highest land tax, or is it Melbourne that has the highest land tax?
Yeah, if you own a land over a certain amount, then yes, you do pay it. But no, I wouldn't say they're typically necessarily just looking at New South Wales. No, they're definitely looking interstate. If you're asking, is it Sydney specific? Definitely no. There has been a lot more questions around Orange and Dubbo and Newcastle.
The regions. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Why do you think that is?
And then interstate Adelaide, Victoria.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because obviously you can borrow and buy a house when you're looking at regional. And Dubbo has, for example, Dubbo has a really good return.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Those areas over there don't typically have high income earners and a high population as they do here typically in Sydney. So does their borrowing capacity get affected a lot? Like, I don't think they're thinking investment. I think they're thinking more home.
No, they're thinking investment.
Seriously?
Yeah, they're thinking investment, not moving. No one from Sydney that I know of is moving to Dubbo.
Okay.
or Newcastle in this instance, or Adelaide.
I don't know, Newcastle. I've heard a fair share of people are moving up there.
Potentially, but the ones I know are investing.
Okay, and you can buy a property in Newcastle for how much right now?
You could probably get one for a lot, half the price you can in Sydney.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay, and what's the typical income?
It is
Like-
slightly lower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're living and working in Newcastle, yeah, you'd be or even any of the regional areas, right? You would be making less,
Yeah.
but not significantly less.
When it comes to income earners and you helping them, to obviously obtain a loan and then to make sure they can actually service the loan, what is the typical income range that you're currently helping right now? People get into the market, even with everything that's happening.
That's an interesting one. I would say between 70K
Yeah.
and 350K.
They doing it by themselves or with their partners?
Sometimes by themselves.
At 70K?
Yes.
How on and where they purchasing?
Well, no, yeah, regional.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense then.
And then remember, if you're purchasing an investment, you're using the rental income as well, right? So you're not using 70K.
Yeah. Interesting. Just before the podcast started, we were talking about, was it in Bexley?
Oh, yes, the pub that
if
sold.
you want to talk about that, yeah.
Oh, okay. I think what the conversation was is that we were saying,
We're talking about rezoning and development.
and development, and we were kind of saying, is the market crashing? Is it really quiet? What's happening in the market, right? Generally, what are we seeing, kind of a thing. And probably in the last kind of month or two, there was a pub in Bexley that sold for about 70 mil, is what I was telling you about.
Yeah.
My point with it was that there's this thinking at the moment that nobody's investing, nobody's buying. And I'm not disagreeing. It's quiet in the market. Oh, yeah, it's definitely quiet in the market.
Interest rates are like, what, below 40%?
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's not quiet. It is quiet, but there is still purchases, right? I mean, I don't know if you know Sydney, Bexley, $70 million purchase. That's quite significant.
It is.
Right?
It is, yeah.
Okay, but if that's happening, what is potentially the thinking then? Is the thinking that, say it's a commercial asset, clearly. Is the thinking that potentially yield is important? They're going to be getting different
Cash
rental.
flow. Cash flow is the biggest.
Yeah.
Park 70 million somewhere.
Yeah, but what else does a pub do? We were talking about this because you mentioned car spots, right?
Yeah. I was looking. Where was it? The Wilson's car park in where in Circular Quay.
Yeah.
It was in 2013. It was purchased for like a monstrous number, but then the income that was getting from there was 7 million. This was 2013.
Okay.
So just imagine that now.
Yeah.
Like it's very,
yeah.
constant cash flow is constantly coming in. So just imagine at that time 7 million. For argument's sake, 5.5 you can borrow. That's $35 million that you see where this is going.
Yeah. But I guess the thing is, what I feel like is happening is that if you purchase, for example, a commercial asset, if it has multiple different types of income and it's got a good return, there is interest. Obviously, there's interest because you're not going to be blowing 70 mil if you're thinking you're not going to be making money out of it, right? So you're looking at return. That's what you're wanting. And you're wanting diversification in terms of how that money potentially can come in. So you don't want to buy something that has a sole purpose.
Yep.
Like a cinema is the one that
we were talking about
earlier, right? A cinema is quite static in terms of what you can do with it and where that money kind of comes in from, right?
Yeah.
And sorry to tell you, Netflix and Disney have come along, right?
It's true. Yeah,
so,
that's true.
It's an interesting commercial investment there. But if you take a different property, like the pub or like something similar, where it's got multiple different ways of generating that income.
A shopping centre.
Yeah.
But that's like large scale. That's like people above 100 million net worth. worth.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm not
But
saying
to the everyday, to the everyday person,
no,
if
but
they're looking to purchase commercial, especially around my age, that'd be harder. But if they're, maybe above 30 and they have a partner, then
potentially,
if they're
yeah.
frugal, they can do a few things.
And look, I also don't recommend buying a commercial property as your first purchase anyway. So I think you need to
You're
get a
chasing the
feel.
growth.
Yeah, I think you need to get a feel of what it's like investing in property before you get into commercial. So residential, and then getting a feel for it, maybe suffering a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what the pains are with it, and then potentially going into commercial.
The way that you describe it is like someone when they start a business. Like, don't start a business straight away if you don't know what you're doing. So basically, purchasing resi is like you're learning how it works before it goes into, because commercial is literally a business. Because if you're setting leases,
Yeah,
because residential is like a year to year thing, whereas
yeah, commercial is
off
usually
the
a
rip
long
you can
term.
just say
Yeah.
5 to 10 year lease plus 5 year option plus 4% increase every year. You're basically running a business. Then you need to make sure that there's certain outside factors where if COVID happens, you want to make sure it's sort of recession proof, like a liquor shop, for example.
Mm.
I've never heard of a bottle go out of.
Not yet.
Nah, never heard of that.
Although young people are drinking less, so maybe not.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That is
So
true. Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
not a
that's
great.
true.
Do you know what's going well? If I had my $10 million sitting there,
Yeah,
wellness center.
wellness center.
That is where I'd be putting my money. Why
Wellness
you look
centers
at
make
this?
money? Seriously?
Yes. Have
No,
you
no.
not
But
seen?
during a pandemic, because it's sort of like Pilates. Like it's sort of a market like that where it's seasonal ish, if that makes
It's not
sense.
seasonal. Everyone's
Yeah.
going to wellness at the moment.
Or
Everyone's
maybe it's just
into
not me.
well-being, drinking, whatever. How many people walking around with those green shakes?
Oh, the matcha is it? Yeah,
I don't know.
matcha.
Different green shakes with all the vitamins, kale and avocado and whatnot, right? Like everyone's into
Everyone's a health guru now.
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's a health guru. It wasn't like that before. Everyone was drinking
Yeah.
and partying and whatnot before, right? That's where everyone was going.
That's another topic. Why do you think that is?
In general, like there's a much more stronger health focus, like even mental health, right?
Mm.
Well, now we're going into a real different conversation, but before mental health, like
No one really cared
you know,
about it.
yeah.
No.
Or you'd be like, I'm feeling this, and you'd get told, well, too bad.
Literally. Literally. Yeah, yeah.
And
Like,
you'd go,
move on.
yeah, move on,
Yeah.
right? It's very different now. There's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more. I think people feel more comfortable being vulnerable a little bit as well.
Mm.
Whereas before it was you hide it, you don't show it, right? Whereas now everyone's like, oh well, this is what's happening. It's much more open. But then that allows for that health kind of conversation and health industry to really grow. Anyway, we've really diverged. Really diverged.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But in terms of commercial real estate, and we're saying that there's no, like, basically you can still negative gear on there.
Yeah, you can.
When would you say for people, to jump into commercial? Like, let's just say if you're to pick an age and an income and their situation.
I think you need to have a bit of cash, not necessarily an age, right? So, maybe you could be 25. Maybe you've already bought your residential property and you kind of understand how it's worked.
Mm.
You feel really comfortable with it. You have a good understanding of it, right? Potentially. Or mum and dad have invested in a lot of commercial. They've got some wisdom to pass down, or you've got a good support around you. Maybe a really good broker, maybe a really good accountant, maybe a really good financial planner, and maybe a buying agent that you can kind of lean on, right? So they've got a bit of wealth of knowledge to kind of say, this is potentially what you could do, right?
Yep.
But once you've had that, maybe it's at 25 that you can jump into it, but you do need to have the cash for it.
Yep.
So that is the other side of it, right? You're not going to buy a commercial property with 50K.
No.
You
Minimum
could
is like
buy
what,
a
150?
residential potentially first home buyer with 50K, but you cannot get into commercial with 50K. You need to have a lot more saved than that.
Let's just say if someone put in their mind, I want by, for argument's sake, $110,000 passive. What does that look like if they're starting their journey? Let's say just got into the workforce at 20, then want to exit, let's say after 40 years. For argument's sake, 110, 120,000 passive. What does that look like?
So what? They've started working at 20 and they want to exit at 40.
No, no, no. They want to exit at 60, so 40 years from there.
So they want to, yeah. So in 40 years, they want to retire.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Correct.
Wow, that's a long wait.
What does it look
I'm
like?
joking.
What does it look like?
All right. Well, it can be a combination. I don't know. I'd say you should have a combination anyway. But you're saying they want 120 to retire.
From what is it? 2.5 million needs to be paid off. Isn't that the number to get 100,000, 120,000
in return?
Yeah.
It depends what you've invested on, right?
So
it depends on what your return is. Are you working on a return of 4%? Are you working on a return of 6%? Are you working on a return of 10%?
Let's just say they haven't looked at commercial. They're just solely looking towards residential because that's their comfort, so to say, more than jumping into a risky avenue, because it is sort of a risk jumping to commercial compared to resi.
Do you know why people like resi?
Why?
Because banks love it to start with.
There's a security on their end, okay.
Yeah. It's easy lending.
Mm.
It's usually very low risk. Usually if you have a tenant or if it's not tenanted, it's usually 1 to 4 weeks maybe over a 2-year period. Very little. With commercial, typically I think they work off 3 to 6 months. Sometimes it's longer. Sometimes it's 12 months. You got to weather that.
I think that's why there's a bank guarantee sometimes.
But weathering that can really hurt.
That's true. That is true. But if someone was starting, you'd recommend for them to go, for argument's sake, they want between 80 to 100, and they're like, I want to jump into the market. What does it look like for them if you're creating a plan by 60? I want basically
of commercial.
No. Residential, and maybe they might. You never know where life takes them. They might then flip into commercial.
They might have invested in Ethereum before it went up. And
that's stupid.
And then
no. That's like what do they call them? NFTs. It's like those.
Crypto.
You can't see. You can't hold it.
No, you can't. It's a tricky one, right? So now you're talking about financial planning and advice, which I cannot do legally. But
if you were to go off your own plan, no one's gonna hold you liable. You're just saying, you've helped a certain client, purchase a certain resi property. You're like, okay, by doing this, we hope maybe in 4 years, leveraging some equity to purchase on something else, but obviously making sure your income can also service that at the same time. It's growing just above inflation yearly as well.
Yeah. So you need multiple assets, right?
What's the number? The magic number.
What's the magic number? Well, it depends. Is this duplex? You got 2 duplexes with granny flat, both generating income down the road.
I'm just saying, someone might be watching this. They're coming out of uni. They're doing a trade, whatever it is. They might be on 60, 70K. Okay. Be like, okay, I want to be increasing my income. I obviously want to be saving maybe for the first 2, 3 years, living frugal. I don't want to be going to Europe partying and doing shit. Then afterwards, I want to put that deposit on a property. What does it look like for me to get to a certain period where I can be living off 120 grand? And you know what? Piss off Australia. I want to go live in Greece. I want to go live in Lebanon. I want to go live in Moldova. I don't want to be here, or Bali, wherever it may be. What does that look like?
It's hard to say without looking actual numbers, right? So you could look at actual numbers with this. Like, what is actual return of the investment, right? How much is it generating back? But I would very generally say 10 years, you're going to be working hard to pay that off, right?
Yep.
Your first 10 years. But post 10 years, you should be generating some positive cash flow, right? So, and you should have built equity around there.
How much was the property bought for to be doing that though? Because if you're buying 800,000,
okay. So let's say your typical loan at the moment is probably around 600, 650 for a residential. That is currently what it is, right?
Yeah.
So if you work off that, let's say the purchase price was 800, 20% deposit, rough numbers now.
Yep.
So if you've bought a property for $800,000, depends where you've bought it, depending on what the return is, right? So yes, houses typically have better capital growth, right?
Yeah.
I'm not telling you anything that you don't know there, right?
Yeah, everyone knows that.
But an apartment potentially would generate a higher rental income.
But not the growth.
Correct.
Okay.
But you can buy, let's just say, let's go Erskineville. You could buy an apartment in Erskineville for $800,000.
Yep.
Right? And that might be generating 850 is the last one that I saw per week.
It's a good yield.
Yeah. It's not bad, right?
Yep.
But your growth is not going to be as high as if you've bought a house potentially somewhere else. But I don't think that house is going to generate that rent. From what I've seen, the rental will be lower
Okay.
on that house, but your yield is going to be higher on the apartment. So it really depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, right?
I want 100 grand by 60 for like your person X wants 100 grand by the time they're 50.
Yeah, and
55.
I think what you need to do then is purchase multiple properties. So you purchase, potentially you start with that,
Yep.
or you start with a house.
Mm.
Doesn't matter. Use the capital, release equity.
Yep.
You purchase your next thing.
So let's just say you've bought 1.5 million worth, for argument's sake. Let's just say in the Erskineville example, you bought it at 850.
Mm.
Then you bought, let's just say you're like almost comfortable with units, even though you're probably paying a shitload of strata on there.
I think the strata wasn't that bad. It was $4,000 in a year.
I know someone that bought in Cronulla is paying 3,500 a quarter.
Yeah, so it probably
That's
has lifts. It probably has a pool. It has, the flashy stuff. I'm saying maybe don't buy the flashy stuff. I know it looks nice,
Yeah.
but maybe go back to, and I know everybody hates this, go back to the red bricks.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that.
Go back to the red bricks.
Yeah.
Go back to 8 to 10 units on the property.
Okay, so
Smaller kind of property.
So you want the units let's just say if someone wants to invest through units where there's a scarce supply on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a demand on rent, so it's pretty easy to find tenants, right?
Yep.
So it's not going to be, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So it's a pretty safe, depending on your risk appetite, it's a pretty safe start to investing.
I'm trying to see why you're saying that. Do you want to buy the whole unit block? Is that why?
Yeah, I do.
That's why. That's why. Okay.
Why not buy the whole unit block, of course? You have a lot more control from an owner's corp.
Yeah.
Strata's usually a lot lower.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to do that, but a high rise with a lift, with a pool, with all those things is going to have a higher strata, right?
Because over time there might be some.
Yeah, there's high maintenance, right? Painting the facade, doing different things like that. That all adds up, right? So yes, your strata will be higher. If you go with villas, townhouses that still have strata components, potentially, or an apartment, your strata is going to be much lower. It's not going to be very, very high.
Okay.
So your return is going to be quite favourable.
So Billy, you'd say, okay, start in a unit,
Well,
red brick. Let's just say a red
Start
brick.
small.
Let's
When I'm
say-
saying start small.
Yeah. So we'll say jump into a red brick first. for
Yeah, not a
argument's sake.
flashy one.
No. Yeah. Let's say you purchased 700.
Yeah.
Let's say if you did get some growth out of there, and you were saving afterwards, or you want to use any equity, purchase then a home. Let's just say where
Depending on what you want,
maybe
yeah.
say Newcastle or
Yeah.
Tamworth or something
Yeah.
like that.
Buy something with a large amount of land.
Then your land tax goes up. But anyway, that's
No, but you don't really own any land prior to that
no, you don't.
because the
But-
unit's not going to have.
How do they charge you on that? Isn't that what the usage of
Yeah,
the land?
well,
or-
that's the thing. There's
Okay.
very little land tax involved with that.
All right. Then after that, now you want two properties. You'd say you jump to
Maybe you do commercial now.
Okay, and what's the asset that you'd be looking at?
With commercial, I think this is not a secret anyway, but industrial property is definitely the one that seems to be the one that most people
Okay.
do well in.
And let's just say they purchased 800. Now they've got like what, just shy of 2 million? Should they just stick to that and have that paid off and be like, okay, now because this is going to be paid off, I can be like, all right, 40 years time, I'm going to be getting 100. Should they then stop there, or do you think they should keep going more? It's just subjective after that.
I think if you're looking at retirement, so you've picked a magic number of 60, right? There's one thing
No
that
one, I don't think anyone wants to work full time after that.
I think that I think there's one thing that I would say is
70.
probably
I think 70 me. Yeah, I wouldn't want it after 70.
yeah, no, let's go with 60.
All
60
right.
is a good number. Um the, what is probably undervalued and you probably haven't thought too much about because you're quite young.
Yeah.
Self a self-managed super fund or your super is where I would say you need to be stashing money.
Okay.
That has not been touched in terms of other than obviously the residential kind of component with the tax thing, but it's still quite favorable. And again, accountant or tax person would probably better be advising in this area, but very attractive. There is lots of things in there that allow you to do things that you can't do outside of super, and you can get it at 60, right, without the implications of everything else, right? So buy a property maybe or invest further in your super, right? Because when that money comes out, you can take lump sum money out without the tax implication. Or even if you have, what is it taxed at? 15%.
From super?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're comparing it to if you're making 300K, it's 45%.
Yeah, in your personal, of course.
Yeah.
But then if you have a
So
business,
a huge
25,
difference.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Huge difference.
I wanted to end the podcast with asking what is one message you want to leave with people right now, especially with all the turbulence that's happening, that they can get some hope, and also where can they find you?
Find me probably on mobile. I don't do social very well, so this is a one-off.
We'll start.
First and
helping.
last.
We'll start helping.
But what I would say is, and this is a real case scenario for one of the clients that came to me that was using AI to work out what they do, where they invest, what the loans options were, how to get ahead and all that kind of stuff. And then had all these Google tabs as well. And there was, Claude was saying this, Grog was saying this, Chat GDP was saying something else. And there's a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of noise. But sometimes that's actually a bad thing. And like this person, you become more confused rather than knowing what to do.
Yep.
So my advice would be is, yes, maybe use it to get some idea of what you're thinking, but do not spend hours on these platforms trying to work out what to do because they will not give you the right solution or advice and you'll just end up being more confused. So speak to someone that specializes in these areas. And if they don't specialize in these areas, ask to be referred to someone that specializes in these areas.
Yep.
Get your advice that way.